Hey everyone, I'm Flo, Dude is behind the camera, and we're all about simple food, simple faith. Recently, a patron asked how to create a Chinese menu serving multiple dishes. I thought perhaps some of you may have the same question. During the weekdays, I will generally make just one dish, maybe with a vegetable and a plain rice, and that's about all I can handle. But I do remember growing up, my mom, my grandmothers, all would cook multiple dishes served at the same time every single dinner. And I can't even imagine how they could do that every single day. When planning a meal with multiple dishes, I will generally choose a variety of different proteins along with a vegetable and rice. If I can incorporate more veggies in a particular dish with a protein, then that's a bonus and I won't have to make an extra vegetable on the side. And that also means probably less cleanup for Dude, which I'm sure he's appreciative of. When I mentioned a flavor profile, for example, I wouldn't make a sweet and sour pork along with a lemon chicken because they both have that sweet and sour flavors. So I don't think I would like to have two dishes that are similar in that way. Another thing to consider is different methods of cooking so that I can get multiple things going at the same time. So today's menu, I've included a soup, a recipe that can go in the air fryer or oven, and two recipes that include vegetables and a sauce that will go really well with plain white rice. But if you wanted to, you can always check out my fried rice recipes as well. Hope this helps. Enjoy. Instead of ham, we're going to be using 1/2 pound of ground pork today. I'm gonna get my pot going. Turning it on medium. We're just going to wait for that to heat up a little bit before adding our oil. Okay, just adding about a tablespoon of vegetable oil. And just get my pork going. Well, it wasn't heated up enough, obviously, because I don't hear a sizzle at all. There it goes. I didn't season it or anything because it's just going to take in all the flavors from the soup. So you just want to cook this through. I'm just going to prepare my piece of ginger. So you can slice it up if you like. I'm just going to bash it because I just want the flavor of it and I want to be able to scoop it out easily. There we go. If you don't want meat in it, you can make this totally vegetarian as well. Just don't add the meat. All right, so I'm adding my ginger. It's about 1/2 ounce, maybe a little bit more than 1/2 ounce. When you're leaving the skin on ginger, make sure you clean it really well because you don't want all the bacteria and stuff that's stuck in between the nooks you don't want to ingest that. Okay, I'm adding 8 cups of chicken broth. And again, if you want this to be even vegan, I think, you can use a vegetable broth instead. We're going to bring the chicken broth up to a boil. And once it starts boiling, you're going to turn down the heat and let it simmer for 20 minutes. So while the soup is simmering, we're going to prepare the rest of the ingredients. So I have a carrot. I'm not going to use all of it because it's like a giant carrot. So maybe about this much, 3/4 of it. And we're gonna julienne the carrot, cut it up into matchsticks.
It's a pretty giant carrot.
It is, right? But I love these jumbo carrots because they're quite sweet, perfect for soups. I'm using 1/2 pound of cabbage, and it's about 1/4 of a small cabbage. I'm just going to shred this as well. I'm chopping up 3 stalks of green onion. I'm going to use 1/2 of it in the soup, and the other 1/2 I can use as garnish. Or you can throw the whole thing in if you want. Totally up to you guys. I'm using about 7 large shiitake mushrooms. You can use dried ones if you want, taking off the stem. And we're not going to use those because that can be quite tough. And we're just going to slice these. If you're using the dried ones, make sure you rehydrate them before you start cutting them up and using them. All right, ta-da!
That's a lot of slicing.
It's a pretty big recipe. Feeds 6 to 8, like pretty large bowls, and so it's great for company. So I don't have enough room on my board. I'm just going to cut it up in here. I'm going to cut it in half. And this is about 1.5 pounds of tofu. If you can't find it in this size, you can use more or less. It's totally up to you. Turn them back down. I'm just going to cut them into cubes. Okay, I am using a medium firm tofu, and I wouldn't try using a soft tofu for this because you want the tofu to kind of keep its shape and not kind of fall apart in your soup. And you can use an extra firm tofu if you want, but I kind of like the texture of the medium firm. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'm going to cut them up in like these fairly big cubes, about 1 inch in size. Okay, and now I'm just going to set this aside. I'm also using 4 ounces of bamboo shoot, and this is just canned bamboo shoot. You can get them in strips like this, or they come wider and thinner. Okay, I'm using 1/2 ounce of dried black fungus, and it comes like this, already kind of cut up, and you want to rehydrate that before using it. So I've been rehydrating this for, well, it's been over 1/2 hour now, but you want to at least 30 minutes in hot water to bring them back to, well, undried. Just want to measure out our seasoning, and I'm using 1/2 cup of rice vinegar. If you don't have rice vinegar, you can just use regular vinegar, but I do find that regular vinegar is more strong, so you might want to start with a little bit less. So 1/2 cup, and you can always add more later if it's not sour enough. And we're going to add 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. And again, you can add more if you need more saltiness to the soup later. I'm also going to beat 3 eggs. Just want to lightly beat it. Okay, and set that aside. All right, we're gonna dig out our ginger.
That was pretty easy to find.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna add our carrots and cabbage. And we're gonna cook that for 2 to 3 minutes. After 2 to 3 minutes, we're gonna add the tofu. Heat that through. It's getting quite full, huh?
Oh yeah, is it going to contain everything?
I hope so. All right, I don't know why I thought it could fit in my smaller cast iron Dutch oven. I usually use this when I'm making this amount of soup, which is my 5.5 quart Le Creuset Dutch oven. And I'm gonna add the fungus that I've already drained. Bamboo shoot. All the mushrooms. That would not have fit in the little one.
Impossible.
And 1/2 of my green onions. We're just going to heat that all through. Should take another couple minutes. Oh, one more thing. Don't forget to add the seasoning. Just put it all in there. When the soup is simmering, add your egg in, like drizzle it in slowly so you can create these ribbons of egg. Okay, I'm making a cornstarch slurry. I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Adding about 2 tablespoons of water. Make sure that it is cool or room temperature water because cornstarch will not dissolve otherwise. And this is what's going to thicken up your soup. So I'm going to stir that in. And if it's still not thick enough, like it's not going to be thick like the restaurants because I think they use a lot of cornstarch, which I'm not going to do here, but it thickens it enough for my liking. The egg also thickens it a little bit, and there's so much going on here, you really don't need a thick soup. So I am going to try it to see if I need to adjust the ingredients. Before I taste it, forgot to add 2 pinches of ground white pepper. The ground white pepper will give it heat. And we're going to add a teaspoon of sesame oil. Sesame oil gives it flavor. Let's give this another stir. I think Dude would want more heat, but I like it the way it is. Might add a little bit more soy sauce, so let's do that now. But it's not super vinegary, it's just a little bit tangy. I probably added another teaspoon or 2 of soy sauce. I've got 2 pounds and there are about 24 pieces of drumettes and flats, and we're gonna let it marinate for half an hour. Adding 1 tablespoon of cooking oil, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, and this is just regular soy sauce. I'm actually using light soy sauce, same thing. 1 tablespoon of cooking rice wine, and I usually use Shaoxing wine. I'm using the regular rice wine today. If you have Shaoxing wine, you can just use that. If not, you can use a dry sherry, or we've also been known to use bourbon. Just add a little bit of that for added flavor, but if you don't have it, just omit it. Adding 2 teaspoons of sugar, and that's just to balance out the flavors. If you don't want to add sugar, you don't have to. Just remember that it will be a little bit more salty if you don't add the sugar. Adding half a teaspoon of 5-spice powder and half a teaspoon of ground white pepper. We're just going to mix this around and let it marinate for half an hour. While the chicken is marinating, and you can marinate it up to overnight if you like, the longer you let it marinate, the more flavor it'll have. In the meantime, I am just going to prepare the rest of my ingredients. I have 2 green onions that I'm going to cut up and separate the white and light green parts from the dark green. And here's a little tip for you. I've been planting these in my garden, and green onions will sprout again. So you can either put it in your garden, or you can even put it in a glass of water and they will grow back. We're also using about just a small bunch of cilantro. That will give you about 2 tablespoons. And if you don't like cilantro, you don't have to use it. We really like cilantro. And you can add this to the same pile as the green onions, the dark green part. I'm also using a large jalapeno today. You can use Thai chili if you like, or serrano peppers, whatever pepper you like and can stand the heat of. I'm going to leave these in large rings for people to pick off if they want to. We're also using 4 cloves of garlic, but
They ran out of garlic at the store today. So I am using my freeze-dried garlic, which there's only a little bit left, but that will have to do today. I'm using half a teaspoon of whole white pepper. And if you don't have whole white pepper, you can just use the ground pepper, just use a 1/4 teaspoon. Or if you have other peppercorns that you would like to use, you can do that too. Szechuan peppers would be good, even black pepper if you want. Just gonna grind this up, kind of into, not too much. I don't want it to be totally ground. I want to have the little pieces in there. I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon of 5-spice powder, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. And you want a coarse salt here so that when you sprinkle it onto the chicken wings at the end, you will get a bite of that salt. And we'll pour in our ground peppercorn and just stir that up. And that will be the seasoning salt that you put on at the very end. See the chunkiness of that? Mm-hmm. That covering the chicken wings will just give it a pop of flavor on your tongue, and it will be just so awesome. I'm using about half a cup of potato starch. And this is sweet potato starch. You can get them usually in an Asian market. I find the potato starch actually gives a crispier texture when air frying. But if you don't have potato starch, you can use cornstarch. I'm adding half the wings into the potato starch, only because my air fryer is small. So I have to do this in multiple batches. If you have a larger air fryer, perhaps you can get it all done at once. Just going to make sure that they are evenly coated. I've already preheated my air fryer to 400 degrees just for a couple of minutes. And I'm going to spray the bottom with some oil. I'm going to put the chicken wings in there. Make sure that they are not overcrowded. And I like to stand them up because you can get more chicken wings in there when they're stood up. Okay, we're just going to spray it with some vegetable oil. I'm using vegetable oil, you can use whatever you like. And we're gonna cook it for about 15 minutes and check it halfway through at 400 degrees. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, just going to flip them around. You might need to spritz some more oil on it.
Great.
Only smells so good.
Ooh,
all right, check it.
Brown.
All right. I'm just going to put these aside while we do the second batch. And if this is not crispy enough for you, you can always leave it in there for another 5 minutes or up to another 5 minutes. But these are looking pretty good and juicy. I'm doing the second batch. I'm adding a little bit more potato starch because I needed a little bit more. During the last 5 minutes of the cook time for your chicken wings, we want to get the aromatics going. Turning the heat on to a medium, and I'm doing this in a wok because I want to be able to toss on my chicken wings with the aromatics in the end. But if you don't have a wok, you can always do it in a smaller frying pan and pour the hot aromatics into a bowl with the chicken wings and toss them in there. Once you see that wisp of smoke in your wok, it's time to add the oil. We're adding 2 tablespoons of cooking oil. And if you are using garlic, add it now. Because mine is freeze-dried, I just want to make sure that that's gonna cook. Okay, I don't want it to burn. Hello? Okay, that's another thing with the wok, you move everything aside. Okay, we're gonna put our green onions and chilies in there now. This only takes about a minute, not even. Okay, turning the heat off. That's it. Now we just wait for the chicken wings. Woo! The jalapenos are gonna be spicy, dude. Okay, adding that second batch of chicken wings to the first batch into the wok. Oh my goodness, they smell so good. And look at how crispy they are. All right, you're gonna toss it all together. Then we're adding the green onions and the cilantro to add some freshness. Then another toss, and that's it. Oh my goodness. Get this on a plate. And don't forget that seasoning salt. First, I'm going to marinate my pork. This is just ground lean pork, and it is about a pound. I'm adding 1 teaspoon of soy sauce. And 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. And we're going to set this aside for about half an hour. I'm using a thumb-sized piece of ginger, and see, it is thumb-size. We're looking for about a tablespoon of grated ginger, and I've already peeled it. You don't have to peel it if you wash the skin really well. Okay, 1 clove of garlic. And I'm just going to use the grater, so I have one less thing to wash. Or I can chop it up, I suppose. But I'm going to put it in with the ginger because it's all going into the pan at the same time. Using 3 green onions, and I'm going to separate the white from the dark green. And we're going to cook up the white parts, but leave the green part, the dark green part, for a garnish. Using about 1.5 pounds of medium firm tofu. And tofu comes in all sorts of textures. So this one, whoa, this one is medium firm, it says, but it's breaking apart on me. And I'm just gonna cut it up into, I'm just gonna cut it down the middle here and leave it in my container because I'm just gonna dump it all into the wok when I cook it. And I just want to cut this up into cubes. It's not cooperating with me today, guys. But it's okay, because the tofu is going to break up anyways. I just don't want it to break up too much. So I'm going to cut about 1-inch cubes. Right, we're going to get the wok going. Heating it up on medium. I'm using a wok today, but if you don't have a wok, you can use a large frying pan. And I like to use a wok because it's easier to move all the ingredients around. And once you see that wisp of smoke, add your oil, 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. And I'm going to add my green onions, just the white parts. For about a minute or so, maybe less. I'm going to add my ginger and garlic. And this one you'll just cook for about 30 seconds. Then immediately adding the pork. I'm going to cook this for about 3 to 5 minutes. just until the pork is completely cooked through. You know what, if you don't eat pork, you can always use ground chicken for this dish or ground turkey. It'll be really quite yummy. Actually, this recipe makes so much. I don't think a large frying pan is actually going to hold all the ingredients, so you may want to use a large Dutch oven. It's probably a better option. Using 3 tablespoons of broad bean paste, and this is regular broad bean paste, not the spicy one. And if you don't want to invest in a jar of this, you can always use my other Mapo Tofu recipe that doesn't use the broad bean paste. But broad bean paste is more authentic Mapo Tofu, so totally up to you. And because I'm not using the spicy broad bean paste, I'm using half a teaspoon. Is that too much, dude?
No, that should be okay.
Okay.
To not kill me.
Half a teaspoon of chili paste, and that is Szechuan chili paste.
It's the mouth or tongue numbing variety.
And I'm going to use about half a teaspoon of Szechuan pepper. If I can get half a teaspoon. Be gentle, Flo, don't dump the whole thing in. All right, maybe a quarter teaspoon. If you want more tongue-numbing sensation, you can add more. 1 tablespoon of Shaoxing wine. Shaoxing wine is just a rice wine. And I often use it in Chinese cooking. If you don't have Shaoxing wine, you can use a dry sherry or a white wine, or we've been known to use bourbon, just something that's gonna add a depth of flavor. And 1 tablespoon of dark soy sauce. Dark soy sauce is gonna give you some added color and flavor. Okay. Let's mix this around. And adding half a cup of chicken broth. Okay, and adding my tofu. And we're just gonna gently fold this in. And then we're going to cover this and let it simmer for about 3 minutes, just until the tofu is heated through. I'm also going to make a cornstarch slurry to thicken the sauce. So about a tablespoon of cornstarch and a tablespoon of water. And make sure the water is room temperature or cold, as cornstarch will not dissolve otherwise. All right, I'm also going to add some peas. This will just add some sweetness. Now, traditional Mapo Tofu doesn't have peas in it, but I remember when we first got married, this was what I made for Dude because it had vegetables in it too, so it was just a one-pot meal.
Healthy.
Okay, we just want to cook through the peas. Just wait for that to come back up to a simmer. I just made a little well in the middle so I can add my cornstarch slurry to thicken the sauce. All right, does that look good or what?
Looks good.
Turning the heat off, adding my green onions. Okay, it's more than garnish, guys. It's gonna be extra flavor, is what it is. Today, because we're going to make the beef and gailan together, I'm going to cut up my gailan into 2-inch pieces after I have washed the leaves. And gailan is pretty simple to wash. It's not like a really dirty plant. I would soak it in water with a couple teaspoons of salt just to make sure that you kill any bugs and stuff that might be hiding in the flowers or in between the leaves. And when you're buying the gailan, make sure that when you look at the bottom of the stems that there is no white dot. When you see a white dot, it means it's getting old and it's hollowing out, it's drying out in the middle. So you don't want that. And when I say to take off the flowers, I only mean when they're blooming, not like, let me show you. Like when they're like this, it's good because this part of the gailan is the most tender part of the vegetables. You don't want to get rid of that. But once these start to bloom, they'll open up with a white flower. You'll want to remove that white flower because that's where the bugs hide out.
Yuck.
Well, that's what my dad told me. This is about 1/2 pound of gailan already chopped up. And I have a pot of water boiling. I've added 2 teaspoons of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. The sugar actually keeps the gailan green and also takes away any bitterness that the gailan may have. So I'm just gonna blanch it for a minute. I'll be right back. Right, once you've blanched the gailan, just drain it and set it aside until you're ready to use it. I have about 1/2 pound of beef flank. I'm just gonna cut this in half lengthwise. And I like using beef flank because you can see the grains. And so when they tell you to cut across the grain, that's what you need to do. So just gonna slice this thinly. And actually, if you put this in the freezer for about 20 minutes before you start slicing, it makes it easier. But you all know I can't be bothered with that, especially because my freezer is completely full of stuff. I really need to do a cleanup in there. Putting your sliced beef in a bowl, add 1 teaspoon of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of rice wine, and you can use Shaoxing wine. I haven't been able to find it lately, and I've run out. Well, I haven't been able to find the brand that I like lately. Don't know what's happened to it. 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. And that helps to velvet your meat, make it more tender and soft. And if you have time to let this marinate, just let it sit for about half an hour. I have about 1/4 cup of beef broth. And if you don't have beef broth, you can just use water, adding a tablespoon of oyster sauce and a tablespoon of dark soy. And again, if you don't have dark soy, you can just use regular soy. And 1 teaspoon of brown sugar. I have 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, adding 1 tablespoon of water, room temperature or cold water. I'm just going to dissolve this, and this is our cornstarch slurry that we'll add at the end to thicken our sauce. Remember to always use cool or room temperature water, as cornstarch will not dissolve in hot water. And one last thing, I have 1 clove of garlic. I'm just going to put through my garlic press and get that ready as well. And set that aside for later. All right, we're ready to cook now. Heating up my wok to medium-high to get the beef going. And if you don't have a wok, you can always just use a large frying pan, no big deal. I just find a wok is easier to stir fry the ingredients. Once you see a wisp of smoke, add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And adding your beef. Let it sit to sear a bit before moving it around. And once the beef is about 80% of the way cooked through, I'm going to remove it. Then we're going to turn the heat down to low. Just adding another tablespoon of vegetable oil. Okay, getting the garlic in there. We don't want the garlic to burn, so we're just going to quickly stir fry that for about 30 seconds until you start to smell it. Add our gailan. Adding our sauce. Okay, turning the heat back up to about medium. Now that the sauce is starting to simmer, I'm going to add our cornstarch slurry. Adding our beef back in along with all the juices. Just want to cook this for about a minute or two to warm everything up. All right, turning off the heat and serving it on a platter. And I just used the same plate that I had the beef in. And for some extra flavor, you can drizzle a little bit of sesame oil on top.